If you say in the fucking
Our
staircase
conversation.
upstairs, I swear to God.
I have standards.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Because the
I'm
captains
not a
don't.
captain.
All right, lead the way.
Yeah,
Follow me.
So I've been waiting for.
I can sign the waiver. You can send it.
Oh wait, waiver for what?
That I'm.
They're coming.
liability for
They were
myself.
gonna come with me on patrol, but I guess
I
you
gotta
go,
do this
go give your
this
statement.
meeting via statement
Oh.
first. Yeah.
Thanks for cock blocking me, Rhodes.
No, this
I'll be
is
calling
like
you
the
soon.
you
Well,
got
we- yeah.
mayor office block.
It's not true.
Sorry.
Why
Y'all
did
ever been
pink-
trauma dumped?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Jenny more than others.
First order of business. Where the fuck is my espresso machine? Max promised me. He promised me an espresso machine. Oh, I'm angry. I'm sorry. This way.
Hey, April. Hey, Cake.
I lied. This way.
We're going in this room into a corner.
Yep, we're
This
going
is
to the big
everyone's
table over
favorite.
there.
Oh, this is everyone's favorite place to have a conversation yesterday.
What?
Oh, no,
Why?
We'll go over here.
Everyone in the I had a lot of conversations right here last night.
Did I make
It was
no?
great.
Okay. Now we're gonna sit here. Now, I do have to tell you, you want to be careful with how you sit. Well, maybe not. Maybe you're fine. Let me just
Am I sitting here?
There we go.
Can I sit like this at all?
Oh wait, Jenny, you're definitely gonna have an issue. You just want to give yourself some space
Katie is thinking he's 16.
from the chair.
Oh no. I'm
Oh.
God. Oh no.
Okay. Oh yeah. I told you so.
There are things I didn't want to see.
Wait, what?
Yeah, just give yourself some space. You know, it's definitely a little finicky. It's okay.
So I just have to sit like this every time now.
It's fine. I got this. I got this. I really got this. I swear I do.
Here, take a look over here. Do that. There you go.
Can I grab some water before we start?
Are you good?
Oh yeah, sure. Let's go with this.
No. If you do, you need to stand up. Do you need to adjust?
Oh, we're
Is it?
fine.
Jenny, it doesn't sound like you're fine.
It's fine. I'll deal with it.
No, what's the issue?
Don't worry about it. Let's go.
Okay, all right. Where do we start? What are you looking for specifically? I need to know what tea I
Okay,
need to brew.
I have a couple
And
of things
steep.
before we.
Okay.
Okay, we have a couple of things before we start. Firstly, so you are doing this willingly, correct?
What was that?
You are doing this voluntarily. I have not coerced you in any way. Good reply.
you
I have to
have
go
not
to a fucking
I
airport in
volunteer for all
literally
of this. You
12
have not
hours
forced
from
me in
now,
any
and I'm
way.
just not
Okay.
ready. I haven't
And
packed shit.
my next question is: are you wanting to remain anonymous on this, or are you willing to have your name on
Oh,
this
you
piece of
can
paper?
plaster my name on it.
The way it will work is that when it comes to my final report, you will not be associated with any like sentence or anything. You will just be at the list at the end of officers that I spoke to.
I feel I may be one of the few who has their name listed.
They all have agreed to have it listed.
Oh, perfect. We're good then.
So, yeah.
They'll never be able to know which one was me.
No, you're not. They're not going to be able to tell anyway because I'm not going to be putting like personal responses in there. It's going to be an overarching. This is
Do
the
I
feel
do
I got
dev
from the
work
PD.
anywhere
This
else?
is
No,
what kept
not
coming
anymore.
up, and that's what I'm looking for. Do you want this recorded or do you not?
Doesn't bother me.
I haven't done a lot of
Fine.
dev work recently
Alright.
because I'm
You can
not,
record it
not
if you
really
need to.
feeling it.
You know what? Record it in case you need to go back and list something I said word for word.
Perfect. I'm going to put a little recording device. It's just my mobile phone on the table. Anytime you want to say anything off record, you may tell me, and I will be able to turn off the recording. You do have the ability to speak to me off record as well.
Oh, you're good.
Okay.
Okay,
No, it
so
can
the-
all be on record. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. The first thing we're going to start with is just basically going through a couple of questions. I'm going to try to have like a conversation with you. Michael can be involved as well. And we're just kind of going to roll for it, and I'll just take notes of what is said and what happens. But the first thing is, what would you rate your overall satisfaction within the police department?
Are we talking scale of 1 to 5, 1 to 10?
Whatever you want to do.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say a promising 3.
Why would you rate it that?
That's a good
Oof.
start. That is a very good
That's
start,
a
isn't it?
loaded question. Well, I feel that the state has done very little to support the police department, just as a whole.
What? We can. We're not allowed to until now.
I feel that I can't even say recruitment is the issue as much as it is training. But for context, as it currently stands, when the police department was put together, there was an original skeleton crew. Now, amongst that skeleton crew, there were quite a few of us. But that skeleton crew lasted a very short amount of time until people just stopped showing up. And oh yeah, go ahead, Mr. Simone.
When you say the state hasn't supported, do you mean the federal government or do you mean the actual state?
I guess both.
Okay.
Whether that be for our day to day. No, I can go. I'll go more into that in a bit. So back to the skeleton crew. The original skeleton crew, which was kind of intended to be like the people who are going to be training up the police department, was fairly small at the beginning, and I anticipated it'd be a couple weeks before recruitment started and whatnot. But instead of that happening, essentially what did occur was easily half of the skeleton crew just stopped showing up.
Moon Mutt showed that DJ has an
I had
espresso
assumed
machine.
recruitment would happen shortly after that, and even then it didn't.
Check.
There has been it has been told to me rather that captains have previously referred to the old guard as having been problematic or something to that extent, which personally I think is ironic, because when I was having this conversation with somebody that day, there was 4 or 5 officers on duty, and coincidentally it was me, Cornwood, Barrick, Sky, Alice. We were the only ones on duty.
That's wild.
And the only thing common amongst us is we was the old guard that they were referring to.
Skeleton crew means that it's a group of people
that the people willing to do this job
that just kind of they're
used to do
there
this
to have the
job, if you
PD
ask
run.
me. Anyways, so a lot of people just stopped showing up.
Yeah, the bare
recruitment didn't
minimum.
happen for pretty much an entire month after. We were dealing with so many concurrent situations, and when I say dealing with, pretty much pushing aside, because logistically we could not deal with more than one situation at once. If there was one senior
meant
bun
no meat on their
stabbing, that was
bones?
all
You
hands
could say
on
it
deck.
like that. There was no meat on
We would
the
sit
PD
there,
bones.
document scenes for
It's a
about an
skeleton
hour, take statements over the course of that hour, and everything would essentially boil down to a he said, she said situation, which is fine. However, throughout that hour, we were unable to respond to any 911 calls indicating people were getting robbed.
Shit if you ask me, I'm gonna put it in. I'm gonna take a picture. I'm gonna
Again,
be like, "Oh, you."
logistically,
Oh,
it's
you
a
owe me.
massive issue when we don't have
Bit.
people on duty to be able to respond to these things. So that's probably one of the primary concerns.
You owe me,
The thing is,
bitch.
then recruitment happened. But recruitment was happening solely amongst captains. Captains would be interviewing people. Turner would be on duty in his office, doing back-to-back interviews amongst people. I don't believe, and I could be wrong here, I'm not going to pretend to know every bit of information. I was not originally an FTO. I was asked to be an FTO by Turner. He asked me to consider it, but I was not originally one. But I don't believe much of the hiring had any say beyond just the captains, essentially. Which is problematic, because I feel as though, again, I wasn't present, so I don't know what questions he was asking, but we received quite a few people that we had to train that needed a lot of attention. not just
I wonder if you can see him
hey,
breathing or not.
I've been a police officer for X amount of time, and then we sort of show them the nuanced bits within our police department. It was like, for some people, we had to train pretty much from the ground up, which is not necessarily the worst thing in the world, but when we already are down bad regarding a skeleton crew, which is currently a portion of a skeleton, we don't have the bandwidth to accommodate training somebody from the ground up. We need people with prior experience. And so the way I like to describe it is, y'all ever see those massive trucks that have like,
Cheerios, thank you so much for a month.
an escort by a police department both in front of it and behind it for miles because the truck has something nuclear on it, and so no vehicle can be within vicinity of it. I would equate our training program to a small 2-lane highway. Okay, and for every cadet we take on that needs that level of training, they are that big massive truck taking up both lanes with a 3-mile escort in front of it by police and a 3-mile escort behind it by police, taking up all police resources.
Conversation so far.
That's
not a good look.
so that we can't have a fluid sort of FTO environment, because so much effort and time,
so much energy, and all
is being
your
put
More passion.
into
So not
one
only-
person.
So not only are you expected to go police the state, you're also having to police yourself and your cadet, which obviously is exhausting when you're going from call to call to call. You constantly have to back check on your cadet as well. Okay.
100%. And the reality is, there have been people who have applied to the police department that do not need a fraction of the level of training that those people need. And in the same situation, a small 2-lane highway, those cadets that don't need that level of attention are either small subcompact sedans or small hatchbacks. They can weave in and out of traffic. People can pull in front of them. They can pull ahead of people, right? Because there's enough bandwidth there. But the moment you stop all traffic by throwing in this big, massive project in the middle, big, massive truck that nobody
Max
can get
was right.
past,
Well, that's the
because they
thing, though.
require
He
so much
was.
attention,
He wasn't incorrect.
then everything behind that is going to be delayed. Here's the reality.
But people
Every FTO
scared.
that we currently have was part of or originally brought to the police department shortly after the police department was put together by the state. Okay? Now, what this means is that we were subjected daily, every hour, to a senior bun stabbing scenario where everybody is screaming, where we are outnumbered 3-1. Okay? Detaining people is super impractical because, again, we're outnumbered 3-1. It's a he said, she said over and over and over, and it ran like that for a month and a half before recruitment ever occurred.
What was he right
And the
about?
reality
That the PDs
is, every
run like
FTO
shit.
we currently have, as it stands, and I can only speak on behalf of Shift 3, is burnt out. And when I say burnt out, let me give you some numbers. I feel this will also put it into perspective. Give me just a second.
Well, yeah, Moon has. That's the thing, though. People need to realize Moon has both point of views. He plays a cop, but also Max.
This is a conversation I had with Slacks. This was during Turner's LOA. But as it stood at that point, we had 11 officers on our roster. And when I say 11, I mean full officers. Of those 11, people who were, like, for all intents and purposes, MIA, there were 6 of them. Which meant that we had 5 on-duty active officers.
No, it wasn't.
Just about every day.
It was just different.
Now, of the people who showed up, taking the remainder, that's 5, as I said. In Shift 3, we have 6 FTOs, that being Flop, Turner, Barrick, Alice, Sky, and myself. Right? Most of us have been here from the beginning. Barrick was a hire afterwards, or not Alice. Sky was a hire afterwards. But Turner,
Y'all
Flop,
you're fucking farting,
Alice,
Jesus. What has Moon
and
done
myself
to you?
were here from the very beginning. Sky hired maybe a week or 2 in. Same thing with Barrick. Barrick got hired because I pointed him out to Turner on the fucking sidewalk off of Alta and Carson and Innocence and said, if you need a guy who's going to do the work every single day, he's your guy. and he got hired a few days later after getting an interview. Of these people, of these 6 FTOs, I spoke with 5 of them. Every single one of us is burnt out, not even from training, but from just what we were subjected to the month and a half, 2 months prior of being incredibly short-staffed. I'm talking 2 to 3 people on average on duty every day. And the reason, in my opinion, the numbers ever got that low was because we didn't have backup. And if I can't deal with one situation, never mind the amount of concurrent crime that happens at once, I don't know. Hold on. One second.
There's 9 officers currently on duty.
Sorry, I saw someone. I just wanted to make sure they weren't listening in.
Fard RP, best RP.
So back to what I was saying. All of us are just burnt out on the basis of having showed up every single day, despite the fact that we had very few officers, despite the fact that when we were responding to calls, there was no backup. Because again, if there's 2 or 3 officers on duty, we can literally only respond to one call at a time. So it doesn't matter if there's a bomb at Senior Buns and somebody actively being stabbed in front of EMS, we can't deal with both of those at once. It's just not practical.
Yeah.
So here's the issue. There's the excessive burnout because all the current FTOs are all of the original or, partially original skeleton crew. We are now tasked with teaching people who need a lot of attention. As it stood at the time that I had this conversation with Slacks and eventually Turner, we had 9 PPOs, which are essentially solo cadets, some of which truthfully should not have been pushed, but really there was no other choice. We had 9 non-solo cadets, which means for a total of 6 FTOs, 5 of which are burnt out, 1 of which is on LOA. We have 18 cadets to monitor at any given time. 18 cadets for 6 FTOs, 5 of which have been run through the ringer. We don't have this unlimited
Well, here's the thing, right?
supply
So
of energy and time.
we know that
and every time a cadet gets pushed through,
we know the federal
after
government want the
a
PD to be
interview
able to run
that needs a lot of attention. They are pulling away from the tiny amount of wick left in the burning candle,
right?
that each of the FTOs
So the only way around it
that, again, we can't spare
is really just upping their salary.
And for whatever reason, they have been just unwilling to take on people with experience. Hall, you were present for the Liquid Library. We invited a ton of people. A lot of, not all, right? Yourself included. You did not want to rejoin the police department.
It's already kind of high.
But at the end of the day, you saw that there were a lot of people with pending applications. Okay? Louise has been doing Group 6. I think Louise is on duty right now, but Louise is typically not around for all that long. I've seen Louise clock in just to document or take a report for a situation knowing that we're short-staffed.
It kind of depends. It really depends on how long you're
ago, she did
working.
19 hours across 2 days.
Say you do a shift, right? How much do they get
Specifically,
these
I was
days?
off duty for a few days. But
So,
do they get
but
800?
she had the same thing that like she'd rather would do
Or
a
is it 700 or
19-hour
900?
shift than come on duty several times.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And don't get me wrong, like things are looking more promising. Like the more recent round of cadets, we've already sort of acknowledged that in shift 3, the current round of cadets is pretty solid. But it doesn't change from the fact that right
police
now
does
the
800
bottleneck
an
is
hour.
not recruitment, it's training.
They get 800 an hour, and if you do a
And
shift
there
of
seems
8
to be
hours,
this unwillingness to
so that's what you make in
sort of
8
push
hours.
people ahead without officially going
That's a
through
normal
the
shift,
process. But
quote
the reality
unquote.
here is there ain't going to be much of a process when there ain't going to be much FTOs, because the FTOs, again, the wick that is burning is practically non-existent.
Yep.
So
yeah, exactly, Esfand. Like people have
that's-
weird assumptions about the
again,
PD. Like you were
I
doing
think this
crazy hours.
whole
The only
old
reason
guard
you have so much
bullshit
money
needs
is
to come
because
to
you
an
did
end
like
because it's not a coincidence
14,
that
16 hours.
myself,
Like 800
Varric,
times
Flop,
16
Alice,
is still a lot of money.
Sky,
That's like 12
and
grand.
Cornwood, despite his suspension or whatever, showed up every day. I don't think that's a coincidence at all. Because what's happening is these cadets are showing up. They're seeing what they're subjected to on a day-to-day. They're seeing that we're short-staffed. And they then think to themselves, I don't want to deal with this. If the original skeleton crew halved in numbers because of what we were subjected to every fucking day, do you really think taking on new cadets who are all,
So I feel like
bright-eyed at the beginning and super happy, and then are subjected to stuff on a daily basis that they can't deal with because it's a logistical nightmare, you think they're going to stay? No.
I think it's fair that the government or the federal government wants PD to be able to fund themselves, but that also means that we have to compensate by upping their money. But the issue with that is also that it's a slippery slope, because giving PD more money doesn't mean better quality. It doesn't mean that they're going to use the money. They might use money on other things, and then they stand in a position where they can't fix their vehicle still.
My understanding, he had hit somebody, and it struck a person on a sidewalk.
Yep.
Why would they do less work though?
In my opinion,
I don't think PD as a whole doesn't want
what
to
happened
work.
is terrible, right? What happened is terrible, but at the end of the day,
Can I confirm something about that?
If you're
Rhodes?
lumping
I don't
every
have
person
too
in
much
PD
info
in
regarding it,
No,
unfortunately, but
with being the same, you're
den
incorrect.
removal, I just need to confirm. Announcement was put out regarding his removal.
I believe there was. Let me just verify because we can now
Could you
scroll
verify,
through
please?
this. Yep.
Like Jenny has also said, the amount of money flowing into the state is less because there is less
Removal
crime
of
being committed,
officer-
meaning that
oh, wait,
there's
no,
less fines
not that
and
one.
less money to be made in that way. And that's because of the state of the server is. People
Yep,
do
removal of
crime,
Officer
yes,
Shiesty.
but they don't do a lot of crime. And they don't do,
LSPD High Command came to the united decision for
high-end crime yet.
Denzel Shiesty to be terminated after being the first officer to accumulate 10 DAPs. This being the first High Command review for an officer is taken very seriously. We have a commitment to upholding the highest standards of integrity and accountability within our ranks. Denzel will be eligible to reapply to the PD. Any questions regarding this, go through the proper chain of command. But here's the reality. If he's eligible to reapply,
We also can't
and they
catch
even
them, yeah, that
consider
too.
it, given the current state of PD and the lack of numbers, there should have instead just have been a suspension, in my
Yes.
opinion, with he didn't even necessarily need retraining is the reality. He was put in a rough situation. There is no
Suspension
anytime,
pending
to be
review.
clear, anytime you pit somebody, there is always a risk. It doesn't matter how safe you think it is. You do not have an all-seeing eye. You cannot
Yes.
predict that a million different things are going to happen.
I agree.
Yes, the outcome of this situation was bad.
Yep.
100%. But if an officer tells you that they verified in their immediate vicinity and they did not see anybody, if an officer tells you that
Rhodes
they did
knows
so
his
in
shit.
good faith,
So
okay, and they still get punished as a result, what they're pretty much saying is the actual,
and that's why Cornwood
how should I word this?
and Den should be back on the
The
force.
officer's perspective is irrelevant if the outcome was bad.
And then the punishment
which, to
should
me,
be
is
different.
backwards. I think if an officer is acting in good faith for the same reason, I don't even know if we have qualified immunity, but if we don't, that's a whole separate topic I need to get into. But my TLDR on that is if an officer did something in good faith, and this was during a time, by the way, that Den was trying not to take primary on scenes because he felt as if he was being, targeted for getting
Yes.
daps and whatnot.
Yep.
So much so that the police department was joking that they were not disciplinary action points; they were Denzel appreciation points.
That is being reported to me. Yep.
Mm-hmm. And then
Hey,
he didn't
Rhodes,
even
how
want
would
to
you
be
like
a
to be
part
a
of that
captain?
pursuit. He got called in as backup because he was in a Taurus and the vehicle that they were in required it. He responds. He does his job. The way that the person corrected their vehicle ultimately resulted in them striking a civilian, and bam, he gets fired as a result. What does that say about our police department? Because to me,
That shit is being
if I have to
handled
sit there and
incorrectly. We had
second
this-
guess
that- we
everything I
literally had
do,
this conversation
because the
as well.
potential exists that, should the person do something crazy correct their vehicle, strike a civilian, I'm now at fault. Even if when I evaluated the situation, it seemed very unlikely, or I didn't have that information available, because let's say a civilian turned a corner too quick or was traveling at 100 miles an hour, and it's not something I could have reasonably expected. Now I'm getting in trouble for doing my job. I'm getting in trouble in this hypothetical for doing my job while I'm paying to work in a lot of cases. It doesn't add up. If retention is something that the police department wants to focus on, they should be sure as hell backing up their police officers when it comes to shit like this.
So so from the couple of talks I've had,
Am I allowed to say
to
anything?
sum
in
up,
this?
kind of, you're in a vicious cycle where you need a train, but you've got too fresh faces. You've got the face of too fresh. That leads to FTO burnout. Which leads to lack of support on the streets, which means that calls that are high priority are still getting missed and pushed away. The ones that you can go to, you are not getting a break between those calls, so at no point is a reprieve. And on top of that, your payment is not you're paying to work basically. So you're putting all this into a nice bundle, and you're being told that also on top of that, everything you do could result in a DAP point, or you have to rethink everything. You have to be careful.
Isn't the council in charge? No, it's the mayor and the deputy mayor.
Which means that you're not working efficiently on the streets because you feel like everything you do could be scrutinized.
100%. Yeah, that describes it very well. Now,
Because,
to be clear,
again, she is recording, and I don't want to say something that can be used in any way, shape, or form.
Discussion that I want to bring up. However, I do not feel. Let me rephrase. It was bearable to pay $850 at the end of my shift. And let's say I'm dealing with a car where a mechanic was unavailable prior to, and I now have to fix it. You know, if on occasion I had to pay $1,700 because it required more attention, sure, it is what it is. But that was like a one-off thing every week. Not the biggest deal in the world. But when we start talking about the fact that in order for me, just my general maintenance repair for a car in flawless condition that I took out for an hour is going to cost me $1,900 to repair, I am now equating that to, before I do anything, I need to work for 3 hours to justify
I think this is all being put in
repair.
a master
and if
document.
I don't, I've lost money to get the vehicle in the condition that it needs to be at the end of my shift. Or again, in the situation of yesterday, 6 hours, practically broke even.
Yeah, that's not good.
On the cost of repair because of that one-off situation in which the vehicle was fucked. What's up, Mr. Simone?
I just don't want to butt in when you're talking.
Yeah.
I have a few questions.
Ask
have
away.
you heard that the federal government wants you guys to be self-sufficient, like no support, basically?
No, but I have had a conversation with the treasurer regarding funding, and she had informed me that she has wanted to give us the $300,000, and by the way, this has happened already, from my understanding, for the engine replacements of these vehicles.
Right.
But before she can, dish out $300,000, she needs approval from the federal government.
Right.
Now, to be clear, these are engines that are sold at $12,500, and from my understanding, when the mechanics are purchasing them, there's a decent chunk of change for the actual purchase of it. I don't know what it actually is. Hall, do you know? Because I know you do mostly stuff.
No, I'm just there for the money, dude.
Okay. But at the end of the day, the way I see it is there was maybe, let's assume there's $1,000 profit in that $12,500 repair, right, for the engine.
Yeah.
We have 25 vehicles. That essentially means that, a mechanic or mechanics as a whole, replacing every engine in the police department,
it says TBD,
would have profited about 25
to be determined.
Because again, the cost to import said engine is considerably high. It's not like it's some $5,000 engine being charged to $12,500. If I had to assume, it would probably be 10, 11 grand for that.
Yeah.
Probably 11. If I had to guess, I'd say 11. So a grand and a half for each one, and these things are gonna have this happen maybe like once a month or so. To clarify, the day before, okay, so before Etta provided us the money,
Oh.
or not the day before, the day of, but earlier in the day, there was a conversation regarding the state of our vehicles.
Federal
blah blah blah.
government is
We're trying to get
Coil
them
and
fixed.
Buddha.
There's an officer, Bell, who said, "You know what? I will pay out of pocket for 2 of the repairs." Right. So she
How
tells me
much
to
does it
grab a
actually
CVTi.
cost?
That's fine.
I think it's 10 grand or
First
11.
car I grab. When I say I couldn't accelerate, I could not get up the hill exiting the motor pool area. Okay, it was so bad, I had to demonstrate this to the mayor. I gave him keys to the vehicle so that he would understand what we're dealing with, and he could not move the car. It took me from Mission Row all the way to Mosley's to get to 25 miles an hour in that vehicle. The car started beeping like it had a fucking bomb, and it just kept making noises. And when plugged in at the diagnostic tool at Mosley's, they said something like 39%.
Oh, that's fucked.
But we're expected to do our job.
I think it's
Short-staffed,
months.
burnt out, faulty equipment, and we're supposed to hope it gets better.
Yeah.
That's not okay.
No. Another question. I don't know. Has the captains talked about the meeting we had? Like, have they gone into details? And have they said why it's a bad thing that we as the mayor's office wants to step in and do something? Has this been talked about at all?
To be fair, I haven't been present since the implementation of the new legislation.
Okay.
What I will say is I don't like its current application. I've seen 311 calls and have heard from other officers that the mayor is demanding certain things get done.
Mm.
I don't think that's appropriate. I think there needs to be a sort of long-standing issue. Put it this way. I was not opposed to said legislation. When it was brought up to me, I made it clear. I was not content with the captain's behavior. Okay? I don't think that they have done their job properly to the fullest degree that they could have. And again, that's excluding things like Turner being on leave due to far more important things. It is what it is, right? But it doesn't justify the month and a half before recruitment ever took place, after subjecting ourselves to super low numbers, being unable to deal with everything that we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, also dealing with fucked up vehicles, because we dealt with the same thing in the past. But again, at the time, just the day-to-day maintenance, $850, not the biggest deal in the world. But when I'm now paying close to $2,000 for a general maintenance, that's rough. That is very fucking rough.
The issue, and I'm not trying to downplay it. I've had a conversation about this because of legislations I've put in that still hasn't gone into effect for some reason. Anyways, the entire pricing thing is a bit hard to grasp because again, it's kind of, it's a demand thing, and because there's a high demand for something now, that the prices are going to go up. At some point, they might go back down. So it's rough to say. Say the prices were cut in half. Would that like ease things up? You think, is that enough, or does it have to go way more down than that?
I mean, it's definitely much more. Again, I don't think there was a single officer complaining back when we would go to Mosley's or Popular, and we would be told it's $850. Okay, but the issue started when I went to Mosley's and they said our contract expired and the repair cost is $1,500. I said, well, what would it have been with the contract? And he said $850. I'm sorry, but a name on a contract should not justify the difference between an $850 repair and a $1,500 repair. Because I turned around, did not get my vehicle repaired there, went to Popular Street, and it was $850 without a contract.
Mm.
Now, again, I understand that the cost of materials have skyrocketed. I had a conversation with Vinny, who runs Popular. And he said, Rhodes, listen, originally we were buying materials at $175 a piece, to be clear, $1.75, right? And he goes, sorry, you can pick that up.
No, it's fine. I don't know.
He said, we have our profit built in for Popular, and then we sell our parts to mechanics. And he made it clear. It was like $600 or $650 that they were charging for 10 parts to mechanics. The mechanics would then turn around and
Yeah.
upcharge $850. They had $250 for a general maintenance repair built in, right?
I was about to say, like, these
But with the
mechanic
cost
shops
of
don't
materials
exist anymore, do
skyrocketing,
they?
they can't do it for those prices anymore,
Well, nobody can.
which is fine. But then when I go yesterday, that $3,900 repair, and I heard that the mechanic made about $700 and some odd off that repair. That person, in the course of 5-10 minutes, it would have been 5 if the materials were on hand already, but in the course of 5 minutes, made 7 times the amount of money that I made on my shift. Let that sink in. In 5 minutes, they made 7 times the amount of money than I did over 6 hours. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that that's a normal example, okay? It is definitely
Wait, that math doesn't
me
math.
pointing out more of the extremes. But when people see this and hear about this, again, it's not something that people are going to, scream about how happy they are in the police department. I should not have to work to work. Listen, I even said, I'll do foot patrol, and I got told no, I can't do foot patrol. I need to be in a vehicle. And I think the moment we start getting to what is required on the day-to-day, I'm not necessarily saying the state should be responsible, but again, I shouldn't have to work for 3 hours to fix a car that's going to cost me $2,000 on a normal day. This is not me crashing, to be clear, just general wear and tear and getting it into the condition required of the police department.
Okay,
so yeah, that's happened.
One thing I do want to ask everyone this is, if we could snap our fingers and fix one thing right in this minute, what is the one thing that you think needs to be changed as soon as possible?
One thing, soon as possible.
The most glaring issue that you're like, hey, you know what? If this went,
This is
it
a
would
good
ease
question.
just a tiny bit.
Is it 1, more money, or 2, more workforce?
Okay, here's the issue. The one I'm going to pick here is the recruitment of people.
Okay, so he's picking.
Again, I don't think it's a coincidence that the old guard, as it's been referred to as, are the people consistently showing up every day. I don't understand the negative stigma associated with it when there is such a glaring example of how we do in fact
but the reason I'm
work out
asking that is
and
because
are literally
would he rather we bring
the
back
people
Cornwood
pushing shift
and
3.
then,
The only
or
non-old guard,
does he
if
think
you
we
will,
should improve,
FTO,
like in
is
terms
Turner,
of like more
who's a captain,
price, more
who
money?
was on leave. Outside of that, there is not an FTO who is not part of the old guard. So when you start bringing
Cornwood
these
is
people
back?
in who have experience and aren't those fucking massive trucks with the 3-mile escort in front and behind, we will have more FTOs. We will have more bandwidth. We may still have one of those cadets that is one of those massive oversized trucks, but maybe with the additional bandwidth, it's a 3-lane highway instead of a 2-lane, and both lanes aren't shut down. And we can get people to overtake that massive truck and the massive escort in front and behind it, because that 3rd lane will be able to accommodate one of the people who's the equivalent of a small hatchback and can squeeze past.
Yep.
For me, that
I was
would
about
do
to
it.
say that
110%. But when taking on people like that, you do have to consider it's going to contribute more to, the engine replacements and whatnot. Will be running through these cars far more frequently.
Yep.
But if I could just pick one issue, it would be that negative stigma behind the old guard needs to be gone.
Okay.
Yes, it does. Another question.
Ask away.
Do you think so like you talked about it before, then you think he was put in a position that was shitty for him and then they got suspended for it? Do you think bringing back Den and Cornwood would be a good call?
To be clear, so it's hard to answer that question because I'm only going based on small bits and pieces of information I do have. I'm not privy to the entirety of why they received all of their strike points. But I will say this. When Cornwood originally got hired, I sort of jokingly told Turner do we have a good attorney, right? I think Cornwood's execution of certain things is a little wonky, but I think his heart's in the right place.
You that
I
ass man.
think Cornwood is somebody who can be taught exactly what he needs to do to avoid any issues he may cause. But in saying that, he's also somebody who speaks his mind, which obviously puts people on a radar. I'm someone like that too, but I also know where to draw the line. Trust me, I know where the line is. I many years ago had to pull somebody back over the line over and over and over again, and Hall knows exactly what I'm talking about.
Ah, we never.
So trust me, we are familiar with the line. But Den, I don't necessarily think went over the line to any degree in which he should have been released
the issue
or
is
fired,
that
let go, whatever.
Maybe it shouldn't matter that much.
All they're
but then
doing
at the
is
same
delaying
time, in the light of
further
things,
cadets from getting trained if he
makes
reapplies, gets
sense.
in, and has to go through.
But then you
academy.
also have to take into consideration, the current state of PD.
But again, I speak from a position of not being privy to everything that they did wrong.
I'm
So
privy.
maybe I am incorrect. I feel I'm a good judge of character. And in saying that, I don't feel what they did was necessary. I don't feel that Ruth should have suspended herself in whatever the fuck is going on.
Yeah.
Where Aldo has now been made the captain for Shift 1 until Ruth's return. I don't feel the mayor should be throwing his weight over the police department in any capacity, because all of this just shows an unstable PD. If we don't see the same thing, the same chain of command every day, and suddenly we have somebody new barking orders at officers, that doesn't sit well with officers. Listen, I've had conversations with Max. Okay, he ended one of the meetings the other day with, "I'm just going to need you to suffer a little longer," regarding, I believe it was budget-related stuff. But to have that person scream at officers and demand that they do something because he's now their boss is not appropriate.
Okay, that I can agree with. Max has a ass backwards way of going about some things, and I'm gonna kind of let him do his things, but at the same time, this legislation also includes me. It does say the mayor and the deputy mayor.
Mr. Simone, respectfully, don't be a yes man.
I am not being a yes man.
Don't be silent.
No, I'm not.
What I'm saying is don't be silent, because far too often what happens, and Hall can speak with me on this,
we're just waiting for that position to open up.
Dealing with who we had to deal with many years ago, we were anything but yes people, okay? The only reason it ever worked back then was because we allowed there to be a middle ground. We never saw eye to eye, but what we could acknowledge is that each of us had a point, and every time we would discuss the situation, we would come to the middle and agree that something had to change, and that middle ground was far better than either of the two parties being at the different extremes. And so all I'm saying here is that, number one, communication is key. I won't stay quiet regarding stuff. Never have, never will. Jenny won't stay quiet regarding stuff. And back then, Pred sure as hell wasn't going to stay quiet about anything. So when you have people within a department who are willing to talk to each other and not just bash each other and talk shit about each other behind each other's backs, when you can trust that what you're being told isn't because somebody's trying to get a one-up on you and is solely because y'all actually care, when that person who you're disagreeing with hears you, they know it's coming from a place of wanting improvement and not just trying to obtain that person's rank or whatever the situation is.
Yes, and that's another thing I want to run by you. Also, either of you have food, or can I grab something?
Yeah,
I'm about to die.
You can go to the. I don't have food.
do, but vending machine's right there. So.
Yeah, vending machine through here. you need an IFAC?
Uh,
You're my boss. I think technically I can give you one.
Yes, please. I'll just.
Yep. Let me There you go.
Thank you. All right, let me grab some food. Well, that's another thing I wanted to ask him. Like, does he think that Max is wrong? Like, even though he's being loud, is what he's doing inherently wrong? Or does he think that Max is gonna try and do something bad?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let me lock this. Hold on.
Right. So the other question is, do you think as it is right now, like you know Max, you've talked to him,
Yeah.
you know what he's
he
trying to
promised
do.
me an espresso machine. It's been more than 30 days.
Okay.
Still ain't seen it.
I will do his dirty work when we're done here. Do you think he is trying to do something malicious with what he's doing right now? Do you think he's trying to improve? Like that's what basically what you said. Like the way he's going about it, he's very loud, he's very outspoken, he's very, straightforward about his thinking and what he thinks of things. Do you think what he's doing is malicious? Do you think he's trying to run PD further into the ground? Do you think he's actually trying to make
No.
improvements?
No, I think he's at his wit's end with the police department not responding appropriately because again, logistically we can't. I think he's probably taking some extremes.
Damn it.
Not realizing that that's likely going to be to the detriment of the police department.
Okay.
Nobody likes somebody showing up day one, screeching at people who have never seen them as their boss before and demanding that they do things.
Who are you talking about? Why the bad
I
talk?
think much like Cornwood, his heart's in the right place, but the execution ain't there.
Okay.
For me, I would much prefer that the mayor's office does not get involved with any police department related stuff until there is a glaring issue that is widespread within the police department, but it can't be right now as a result of not having enough officers to deal with everything because we can't fix that with a snap of our fingers.
Oh, no.
Even if we were to take on every officer who's applied with prior experience that may have been part of the old guard, they are going to require training. It's not going to be some grand amount, but they're still going to require training. They're still going to require, getting used to the nuance of the new police department. But that's still going to take some time, whether it be a week or two. But it's better than dealing with a cadet that's going to need a month or two of training.
Mm-hmm.
So to add on to that, and just because I want to hear if this sounds right, because I had this conversation with other people, same. I'm going to tell you that you're not alone in these feelings. They are quite common in the people that I've spoken to. What kind of came up was that you believe that if we were right now to implement some of the old guard coming back in, or at least more experienced officers going through that list and getting the actual experienced ones, etc., would you say that a month to 6 weeks is a reasonable amount of time for the PD to respond as such?
Oh yeah,
and
yeah,
to
but
get
that's just I think that's
themselves into a healthy position with the
He
new
is
people
loud
coming
and
in.
obnoxious and in your face about things, and he will say things as they are.
It'll be in a better spot, yes, but I don't think it'll be in like an ideal spot. I think right now the damage has already been done to where for the current FTOs to sort of like re-up on sort of energy and passion and wanting to do this, I think we need a bit of a break, but there is no break in sight because we're the only FTOs. And by taking on those people, obviously, again, there's still going to be a level of training.
They'll be trained, yes.
But unless they are willing to be FTOs, unless the captains are willing to budge and expedite, we can't put it this way. If somebody's a PPO, which is a solo cadet, until they've been a PPO for 30 days, we can't even consider them being a full officer, which I think is bullshit. Right now, King just told me he was on like, I don't know if he said 39, 40 days of being a PPO and he's not a full officer. He's experienced. And despite that, he's still a PPO. He could be a full officer and an FTO contributing to the training of new people. But he's not. Why? I don't know. He technically falls under shift 1. He starts his shift on shift 3. He started, I don't know, 3-4 hours ago, I believe he said. Shift 1 starts in half an hour, which actually brings me up to my next issue. Right now, I think
Can these fucking
certain people are being either looked
spam
down
callers stop
to,
spam calling me,
potentially
please?
ignored on the basis that they're showing up for shifts that they didn't necessarily sign up for. But right now, I think we need to take what we can get and not really acknowledge that, because we need people across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, we need people for shift 3, especially. But if somebody in shift 3 is primarily showing up in shift 1 or shift 2, guess what? We need people there anyways. Now, if we find out that people are maliciously telling us, oh, yeah, I'll do shift 3, knowing that it's going to be easier because we really need people, and then never showing up, it may be problematic. But if we need them anyways, we shouldn't get rid of them.
There's other factors to why people move as well. Like it can be that they fit in with a leadership better in another time zone. It could be that they have more people that they get along with in another time zone and they feel more confident. It's not always as simple as you should be waking up in this time zone because that's what you agreed to.
Yeah. And I've always been somebody who sat perfectly in between 3 and 1.
Yes.
Now, on paper, I think for the most part, I've always been 3. At one point, I was 1 way back when, but on paper, right now, as it stands, I'm shift 3. And straight up, there is a stark difference between shift 1 before the next meeting, and after the next meeting. There's a stark difference between how those are handled, and historically always has been. But if I'm on duty in an hour from now, which is shift 1, nothing should really change. Or if somebody is showing up 4 hours before their shift typically starts and they're going, 4 hours into their actual shift, I don't think that should be looked down upon.
Is it being looked
down? I don't
that
know
is
why King has not received full officer yet. Genuinely, I don't.
That's Albert King, correct?
Correct.
He's one of the people that I have on list to speak to.
Wait, he's not a full officer?
No, he's a solo officer, a solo cadet PPO.
Yeah.
Do you think he should be promoted to full on officer?
Actually, let me tell you this. You want to know the crazy thing? I just had this conversation with him. I'm pretty sure he told me that an FTO has tried to look for reports made for him, and there's been nothing. So it probably makes sense as to why.
Is this what we big dick and just say, we'll just make him a big full officer? I can do that, right? We're in a position to.
Again, this is somebody who we can very quickly acknowledge, doesn't need additional training. They haven't had any problems. Why are we shooting ourselves in the foot in taking up one of those lanes on that 2-lane highway for somebody who doesn't necessarily need it? I hope what I'm saying is coming across as no, constructive and not me being bitter. Listen, I love my job. I really do. I fucking love my job, and I've been doing it for many years. I want to see this department do nothing but succeed. But in order to get to a point in which you can succeed, you need to very clearly point out if and when there are flaws. Because if you fail to do so, you start running into territory of, I don't want people showing up because they acknowledge that there's a minimum amount of hours every week. That's not what I want. It's not what I want at all.
Can you
telling me, Louise,
I
don't. Truthfully, I've never paid attention because I know I'll always hit those minimums because I'm going to show up every day. But in saying that, when I hear Louise would rather do 19 hours
if
in
we
one
can
day,
do it, I should.
To get
100%.
most of it out of the way, then show up every day of the week.
If Rhodes, as a
that's telling
person
me
or as a cop, is saying
she
that
would
he
rather
should be a full
suffer
officer, he
for
should be a full
one full
officer.
day than suffer, temporarily every single day.
You can advise certain actions. Who is a captain for these hours?
Technically we're still in shift 3. That would be Turner.
Okay.
In about half an hour, that'll be shift 1. That would be Ruth, who is currently suspended. So you're going to want to be looking for
Aldo.
Myself or Max.
Huh?
I'm joking. What?
Okay, settle down there over there, mister.
Listen, I have a sense of humor.
Yeah?
I have a sense of humor. I knew what he was saying.
is what shift is King?
King is on paper shift 1, but gets on duty during shift 3.
Okay.
Yep.
So, based on what you've said, and I'm just paraphrasing. I'm not. You think he should be promoted to full officer because you don't see why not? He's
100%.
qualified enough, and he should fit in the time zones where there's currently a lack of full officers, or just generally officers.
In shift 1, they have their stuff listed differently. There are 13 full officers, 3 of which now with Ruth are either inactive or suspended.
Okay.
So there's 10 full officers essentially.
Full officers in shift.
What was that?
And full officers in shift 1.
So there's technically 13, but Brian Knight is listed as inactive. Travis Thorne is listed as inactive, and then Ruth has been suspended. That drops it down to 10.
Okay.
Thank you.
What are you saying, Jenny?
I said thank you.
Oh.
No problem.
Hmm.
And by the way, I'm a firm believer in that if I do wrong, I'm self-snitching. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I make it clear. I may have gotten a bit unprofessional sometimes, but I self-snitch or I get permission to do so.
Yeah.
Slacks told me I was unleashed, and yeah, I may have called somebody a lot lizard once, and then I may have told a lot lizard.
Y'all are fucking.
Oh, okay. That's a new one.
Fucking weirdos.
You want me to explain what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Can we? I don't know. Can we promote him? Like, could we just fucking overstep and just promote him
should
to
I
full
word
officer
this?
and be like, fuck you guys. We have the power.
A prostitute who frequents a truck stop.
Okay.
Now, to be fair, what I said was justified. This lady decided to take a shit on the back of my wheel and then start dancing. And while I didn't call her directly a lot lizard, as I was driving away, the driver of the grime truck, I did say, Mr. Calloway, a lot lizard's low for you, and then drove off. It was like an indirect thing. Now, I clarified this because, again, if I do something that I think is on the line, I'm self-snitching. I want captains to know from me, not anybody else. So then Captain Turner said, "You said what?" And I told him, and I was like, well, Slacks told me I could be unleashed. He said, "You're unleashed." I told him. I didn't say exactly what I was going to say, but and then he clarified to me, Turner said, "If I ever tell you you're unleashed, that does not mean you can call somebody a lot lizard."
Did you get a strike point for it?
I'm going to take this. I'm really sorry.
No, I didn't, because I was cleared to be unleashed. Yeah, I also gave keys to a PD card to the mayor. I didn't get dapped for that either, though I did justify it as we did receive a PD announcement indicating that the mayor's office is now our superior. So therefore, I didn't really see an issue with my superior driving my car.
Wait, so what you're saying is I can pull out PD vehicles?
I don't know that I would do that personally. I just know I gave the keys to the mayor so I could demonstrate exactly the issue that we were having with cars.
You're giving me a lot of good information here, Rhodes. I appreciate it.
Now, I just remember I didn't say that. I did not say, yes, you have approval. I'm not an overstepper. I know the line.
No, but going back to like the entire actually, what do you think of the DAP system? Do you think it's good? Do you think it's fine as it is? Do you think it needs improvements? Do you think it needs to be changed or removed? Because as I see it right now, and from what I've heard, what happened to Den and what happened to Cornwood, from my point of view, first of all, they shouldn't be the what is the fucking quote again? Judge. Fuck, what is it?
What?
It's
the
the
captain shouldn't be judge, jury, and executioner type
that
deal?
is yes, that's the one. Which
Okay.
they are currently. They're the ones giving you a strike. They're also the ones reviewing the set strike. That shouldn't be a thing.
I'm gonna be real. I don't necessarily have an issue with that. Historically, that's how it's always been, right? It
Mhm.
makes sense that a superior is going to be the one issuing disciplinary actions.
Sure.
But in saying that, I don't. It's hard for me to evaluate when